Hello, my name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The video you are about to watch is from the annual CALI conference held at the University of Michigan School of Law in Ann Arbor, Michigan on June 4th and 5th, 2026. Most U.S. law schools are members of CALI. CALI publishes over 1,400 interactive tutorials that teach the law to law students. Faculty can also use LessonLink to create formative assessments using CALI lessons. CALI publishes casebooks by paying law faculty to write and review books that can be adopted in many courses in law school. These books are free to download from our website, or print versions can be purchased at near cost. You can download the PDFs or even the Microsoft Word versions of most of our books and add your own commentary before distributing to your students. $300 casebooks are a thing of the past, and adopting one book from CALI saves you more than your entire institutional membership. If you would like to learn more, email me at jmayer@cali.org. I would be happy to visit or zoom into your school to talk about CALI.
Okay, thanks for coming, everybody. My name is Korin Munsterman. I'm at UNT Dallas College of Law. I wrote, here's a selfless, shameless plug, AI and the Practice of Law in a Nutshell, which came out in April. And as I was going through the back and forth of, editing and proofing and all that kind of stuff, it occurred to me that it's very helpful for people who teach AI and law or practitioners, but there's really no single resource for faculty and for students to learn how to use these. So I ran into John Mayer at AALS, and I shopped this idea, not thinking that CALI would publish it, but thank you for doing that. And I work with John Jorgensen, who was unbelievably helpful. And you guys know Nancy Rappaport at UNLV? Yeah. So I sent her the idea and the first chapter draft, and I asked her what she thought of the idea. And she agreed to, I couldn't believe it. I thought she would say, oh, yes, good idea, go for it. Something like that, or nah, I'm not so sure there's an audience for it. But instead, she agreed, she edited the first chapter, sent it back, and then agreed to do all of the rest of the chapters. It's unbelievable. And then John Jorgensen sent it out to, I don't know how many anonymous peer reviewers. So I'm grateful to them too. Eight, because there's 16 chapters. I guess that works. What happens with the reason I came up with this idea is because I go to conferences all the time, and I saw this kind of yesterday where people were presenting their ideas, some of the things that they had done. The keynote speaker, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, so I don't want to. Thank you. He showed what he did in his contracts class, which is also cited in the book. And I know people afterwards were asking, well, where do we start? And what happens is I present at these conferences, whether it's for universities, I've done some for AAUP, and then also at ALS and at CALI. And people will contact me afterwards and say, yeah, that was really cool what you showed, but I don't know where to start. So that's why I wrote this book. There are some things that are deliberately omitted. I left out Claude Code and Codex and those things because I think that you really should involve IT when using those. And I left out, I just glanced over agentic AI because there have been a lot of reports of security issues and things like that. So I don't want to get anybody into trouble. So I kind of just explain what it is, but don't spend a lot of time on that. I do spend quite a bit of time on Claude Cowork. Anybody using Cowork? Which is a really great product. It's you install Claude on your desktop, and you can use it for chat, for code, and also for Cowork, which allows you to access your files and do analysis on those. It also has what are called legal skills that they've developed. There are over 90 legal skills now, a whole bunch of skills that are associated with being a law student. So that's explained in the book too. If you don't know what I'm talking about regarding skills, there are links to go watch presentations, and then there's a description of what they are, and then some skills that have been copied and pasted into the book as well. So the book was written largely for law faculty, but then I decided to include a couple of chapters for students. The idea being that you guys could take out those chapters and assign those chapters to the students, because this will be available for free on the Cali site. So you could assign just those 2 chapters. They have to do with the ethical use of AI, how to properly prompt, tying academic integrity with professional responsibility, and really useful to get students to use it properly. Because I think a lot of people think that students already know how to use it because they're quote unquote digital natives, but they don't. The book opens with a glossary before the chapters start, just so sometimes the language can be alienating, not knowing what a token is, or what parameters are, or context windows, which are critically important to understand how context windows work when you're chatting, but a lot of people don't talk about those very much. You can think of anybody, you guys know what a context window is? Nobody, somebody not, okay. For those who don't, you can think of it as like RAM, how much that the LLM can keep in its mind at any given time. And depending on the length of the input, say you uploaded a 500-page document, different models act differently. They may remember the beginning and the ends and forget the middle. They may give more weight to the ends of that 500-page document. So it's important to understand that when you're prompting, how to make sure that everything that you want to be seen is being seen. So you can read that cover to cover in about 10 minutes, or you can just refer back to it, obviously. The point is that your students are, oh, there's also a primer, sorry, in chapter 2 on how these models work. Your students are already using it. There's a latest survey that shows that 92% of undergrads are using it. A chunk of them are using it daily. The thing is, though, I think law schools believe that they're getting some kind of training in undergraduate school. So they're coming in with knowledge on how to use these platforms, but they're really not getting that. So they're just using it as a novice user, right? One of the things that Professor Doolin mentioned yesterday was that he didn't expect to see so much bloat in the responses that the students were getting. And it took them a long time to go through grading some of the assignments, because they put track changes on in Word, and he could see the documents went on and on and on and on. But that can be tailored, or that can be narrowed. You don't get as much bloat if you know how to properly prompt. So I've developed what's called a correct prompting framework. C standing for context, O standing for objective, R standing for roles, the other R standing for restrictions, E for expectations of what your format is, C for clarification, and T for tone. So if you have all of those elements in there, the more information that you provide to an LLM, the better your output is going to be. And I stress throughout the book, probably to the point of, beating a dead horse, grounding it in knowledge really, really constrains what the output is and makes it much more accurate, and you have fewer hallucinations. You still have to verify everything, of course, but knowing how to properly prompt and learning some of the advanced prompting techniques, which are throughout chapter 4, you can learn that. Chapter 3 has to do with the platforms, the different types of platforms, and then my recommendations or my explanation of how I use the different platforms and what I use them for. Let's see, sorry, I'm doing this kind of slide deck. So one thing I kind of stress is that the students are using it, but they don't know how, right? There's a framework that Anthropic has adopted called the 4Ds, standing for delegation, right? Determining initially what should be done by a human, what can be supplemented by a generative AI platform, description, that's the prompting part, right? Explaining to it exactly what you want, and grounding it in knowledge. Discernment has to do with judging what comes back. That's the, looking through and seeing whether it's accurate, finding out whether they're hallucinations or is it an incomplete answer. And then diligence, which is owning the results, that you verified everything and you can put your name to it and say that everything is accurate and true. So that's described in there. There's a great site. I have a link to it in the book that you can go to. There's Claude. Anthropic has a bunch of different lessons up there. One is AI for teachers, another one AI for students. So pretty nice little lessons, and you can sign that as well. One of the things that people initially did was when generative AI came out, maybe beginning of this past fall, the fall before, was we want to ban it, right? And we saw that Berkeley has put out a ban. There's a carve out that professors can make their own policies if they want to, but there's an overall ban. As you'll see throughout the book, I think that's a bad approach. There are some things within the Berkeley ban that I don't agree with that we'll talk about soon. It seems to reward or penalize just sloppiness. It seems to be just trying to track people who might have a fake citation, which could have happened before generative AI was ever around, right? They could have cited the wrong case or cited one that's not on point. But those are the people who get penalized, but the people who are better users kind of get to sail by. And I'm not sure if that was their intention. They also prohibit use, unless the faculty member agrees, they prohibit use for things like creating multiple choice questions or practice essays or having it explain the rule of perpetuities in plain English, those kinds of things, which will actually help students learn. But those things are banned under the policy as well. So there's a chapter 6 that has to do with the data supporting the use of generative AI tools in education. There have been many, not many, there have been studies done that have shown, and Professor Dool talked about this as well, that show that there's the high performing students don't get that much, they become more efficient, but they don't get that much help in their performance, right? They're already high performing, it's nominal. But the middle and the low performing students get significant help if the AI use is instructor led. So if you're building custom GPTs or artifacts through Claude to help your students learn, those students are going to get a significant benefit. But if you leave them to their own devices, no pun intended, they're not necessarily going to, they might even do worse. They might even hurt their education because they don't know when to stop, and they tend to accept what the computer said as being true and accurate, right? So if they don't learn how to prompt properly, if they don't learn how to become diligent users, to use it efficiently, effectively, ethically, if the law schools are falling down on that part of it, then we're absolutely hurting students. And we know that they're using these platforms. So the studies show that there's been a half-point standard deviation increase for those people who are using instructor-led AI. There's 16 chapters. There are 4 parts. There's foundations, basically how the models work, platforms and best use cases, picking a platform, taking FERPA into account, how to prompt, etc. Then there's chapters 7 through 11 about course design, assignment design, assessment, building custom assistance, and the other 2/3, service, scholarship, and administrative work. Then there's the 2 chapters for the students, and then there's dealing with uncertainty and what the future holds, a couple of chapters. So I talked about the Berkeley thing. There are basically 4 postures that you can take. You can ban AI entirely. You can create Gen AI resistant exercises. So those are ones that are not easily done for students using a generative AI platform. Things that have to do with personal experience or rooting it in local facts, or doing team-based learning entirely, right? Just limiting as much as possible of designing your assessment or your assignment so much that it doesn't lend itself to being created by generative AI. Then there's Gen AI integrated, right? This is where Gen AI is used, but and it's basically the whole point. So I have an exercise in there where I'm trying to teach students how they have to verify things. So I give them a fake excerpt from an opinion, which has all these different citations in it, and quotations from those citations, and the students have to identify which ones are real, which ones are fake, which ones are misquoting the opinion, which ones are accurate and quoted properly, but don't support the arguments. So it teaches them the verification process. That would be an AI integrated assignment. That's also in the book. And then there's AI transparent, which most of my assignments are. That's where they can use AI as much as they want to. They just have to disclose their use and create sort of an appendix to any of the assignments where they have to document what they use, the prompts. They can just print out the prompt itself or take screenshots of the whole chat and attach that and upload that to Canvas. I created a couple of tools. There's a Gen AI policy drafting tool that's in the book that you can go in and tell it what kind of class it is. You can either do one overall policy drafting tool for your syllabus, or you can go assignment by assignment and say, this one is AI prohibited, and this one is AI resistant, and this one is AI transparent. And it will draft the policy language for you to put into your syllabus for you. So the disclosure and review, I already explained that I have students log all of their chats and then or just upload them. I also created a Gen AI disclosure form, so they can go through or you can just use this and ask your students to disclose what their use was. And then I have this one tool that I really love. It's called the supervising attorney rule review. So you go into it, the student uploads the assignment and they upload their answers. And then it goes through and asks them to defend what they wrote. So that's kind of a way around, and then they upload all of that to Canvas for me to review. So it's a way for them to understand that they're going to have to do that when they're in practice, right? They're going to have to explain to people why they wrote what they wrote, right? But also, it takes a lot of the grading off of me, right? So they do that, they defend what they wrote, they can go back and edit if they can't, and then go through that process as much as they want to until they're actually submitting something that is their work with assistance or augmentation in generative AI. There's chapter 9, I think it is, that those are assessments that Gen AI can't take for them. So there's a full explanation of what team-based learning is. Does anybody use team-based learning? Okay, so there's a full explanation of that. really very full. Your classroom can get very loud because students will start arguing with each other about which was the right answer to a multiple choice question. And they work on an application exercise together where they, maybe I put up a regulation and ask them to rewrite it, and then they all work together on the rewrite. There's that. There are oral exams and a slew of other ideas to get around them using generative AI to do their work. Then there's the other 2/3. So there's a chapter on the other stuff that you have to do besides teaching, right? So you have to do service. Maybe you're on a committee or something. So this is kind of my way of getting faculty to dip their toe in. Maybe they don't want to use it for teaching and they don't like that idea. But if it's going to simplify their committee work, right, where it's going to generate the agenda, it's going to pull their notes together, make the minutes for them and all that kind of stuff, that they kind of like, and they start warming to the idea of using it. Also for scholarship, like the librarians teach them about how to use AI within Lexis and Westlaw. And I do the other stuff, like pressure test an idea, organize their content. Claude Cowork is fantastic for this. And in one of the appendices, I took one of the first things I ran. I have a folder called Legal Education. It's under my AI and the law, right? And legal education. I had 110 files in it across, I think, 9 folders. So I gave Claude access to that, and I asked it to identify the common themes it could find across all of them. That's in one of the appendices. So you can go through and see what the analysis was. It was really fantastic. It really helped me a lot figure out exactly what the common themes are about using AI in education. It can also help with submission and revision grinds. And then administration. You guys have to do like annual reports. Maybe you have to do the ABA questionnaire, work on that. Maybe you have to do reference letters for your students. Those kinds of things, like maybe even like when you're grading essays for final exams, maybe there's like standard language that you use. I know in mine, one of my standard phrases is, you forgot about grounding it in knowledge, right? So I don't have to write that every single time. I could just copy and paste it, but I use that as one of my phrases that I use in my feedback. There's a bunch of bulleted lists, and they almost always. Then, when I was doing this and I was talking to colleagues, I was on a legal writing panel that meets monthly with Kirsten Davis and Caroline from UMD, I think I'll say. Williams. They hold these monthly seminars for legal writing professors, but anybody can really go to them, and they're really, really, really good. So I was talking to her, I was talking to them, I was talking to Nancy Rappaport, and I realized that I needed a chapter on scholarship and tenure. Because I think that's going to be one of the next things law schools are going to have to be on teaching in the classroom. But what do you do? What do the tenure board or tenure committees, second tenure committees do when one professor produces 6 law review articles in 2 years, and another one produces 2 in 2 years? And the first one used generative AI as a tool to help them. And the second one used 6 research assistants, human research assistants. Like, how do we value the work? And unfortunately, when you disclose, and believe me, I use generative AI when it would be kind of hypocritical if I didn't, right? But when you disclose that, it automatically gets a bit of a ding that, right? These aren't her ideas. I can assure you that everything in here has I completely adopt, they're all my ideas. It's all my research, but I use generative AI to help me streamline how to put it together. There's Tom Martin, you know, from LawDroid. You guys know Tom Martin? He wrote this article. I thought it was so perfect. He wrote this article comparing generative AI use with Ozempic, right? So he said that when you meet somebody who's lost a ton of weight and you are a direct, or rather rude person maybe, and you say, oh, did you use Ozempic? Undoubtedly, they're going to reply, well, yes, but I also did yoga and I started running, right? So they're going to give all of that stuff that they added to it. And unfortunately, that's what happens with generative AI. Did you use generative AI to create it? Yes, but I blah, 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 blah. Like sort of like I just did, but what I just did is actually true. Yeah, John.
I'll actually write that out the AI.
That's a very good question. I think he wrote it. I thought it was right on point. So anyway, I went through and I did some research, and there's some people talking about disclosure. There's a couple of issues with this. One, there's no guarantee that the people who are on the rank and tenure committee understand how AI works, right? So if you disclose and you're required to disclose that you use generative AI, like the Blue Book requires, which I think is completely ridiculous. That doesn't understand how AI works. You can put down, I used AI to help me reword this sentence, but you can't, it's impossible to do what they're asking. But if the committee doesn't understand how AI works, know that there's a negative stigma attached to disclosing that, right? You're either going to require people to be dishonest, or the better way to go is to train the rank and tenure people on how it works and how it can be used legitimately to make work more efficient, so that the person who didn't produce the 6 law review articles in 2 years doesn't get dinged, right? And we don't require the person who created 2 with the use of human research assistants, we don't require them to disclose what the research assistants did, that they checked my citations, that they did all my research for me, right? That they summarized everything. We don't require that. So why are we requiring it for generative AI? Kevin Frazier and another person whose name escapes me talks about disclosure in a really good article, and they call it absolute, Alan Rosenstein, absolute authorial accountability, mouthful. And what they say is if you use generative AI or AI at all for analytical work, right? If you're using it for data crunching or something like that, that's not just generative AI, large language model helping you compose, then that should be disclosed. But compositional AI should not be disclosed because it's like using any other tool. We never required it for grammar checking. We never required it for spell check. So why are we requiring it now? Assuming that the author takes accountability for everything that's within the actual product. I also found out that there are no law schools yet that have a policy about how generative AI applies to the evaluation of scholarship when it comes to tenure. But I think it's coming. Yeah, I really summarized all that. The AI penalty, I can't see because it's in dark. But one of the points that they make is if honest disclosure systematically drags down work that is actually high quality work, then you've built a system that punishes candor and quietly rewards that being dishonest. I want to go through the appendices relatively quickly. So the chapters for the students cover, there's a red, green, and yellow light uses of when they should use generative AI and when they shouldn't. I drive home the fact that they should draft first and then use the AI, not the opposite way. I kind of compare honor code language to standing orders from the court so they can see that there's a tie with professional responsibility. And I talk to them also about, make sure that you're constantly questioning yourself about whether you're relying on the AI too much. Is it doing too much of your work? And then, as I said, I link academic integrity, honor code language, and all that kind of stuff to the professional rules of conduct. Some students have reported to me, some of them have reported to me that they actually make their work worse for fear of being accused of AI. So they'll intentionally add grammar errors and spelling mistakes and all of that kind of stuff, just because they're so afraid that they're going to have to defend their work. I spent a lot of time about detectors. How many of you guys have detectors where you work? Sort of?
I mean, none of them are reliable.
Exactly. None of them are reliable, and they're also discriminatory because they really don't apply to legal language, right? So they're looking for sentence lengths and density and words like consequently, therefore, however, words we use all the time. M dashes, right? Lawyers love M dashes. They're strewn through everything. That's, oh my gosh, this must be generated by AI because there's an M dash. Right? So they're really particularly bad when it comes to legal writing. And the other thing is, I don't think people realize enough that generative AI can also help people who are neurodivergent, who have dyslexia, right? So it's a huge benefit who are not native English speakers, right? It's a huge benefit to people. So why would we want to take a tool away that can help people not just understand, because of their own possible limitations, but also we know that the data show that it improves people's learning, particularly the middle and lower performing students. Like the 2/3 of the class, it helps them understand better. Let the appendices in a minute. So if you look at the back, there are, God bless you. I think it's like, I don't know. Oh, the appendices are online. That's right.
The state.
Yeah, so I have a list. The appendices you can get online, and they have a bunch of information. So their Appendix A has a 3-point diagnostic tool that's ready to run. There are custom GPTs in there. There's a whole chapter on how to create your own custom GPTs from start to finish with screenshots and everything. And then there's some instructions from my own custom GPTs that I deploy that you can copy and paste and use yourself, or you can just use the link that I provide. There's a bunch of different artifacts that are available up there. There's a whole thing about using Copilot within Office 365 apps, but also on its own as a chatbot. And make sure that you actually log into it. You're not just using the version that's available to everyone. You want your institutional login. I'm a huge fan of Copilot, just say that up front, but maybe your institution requires its use. And it is FERPA compliant because it has this middle layer called Prometheus, which from Microsoft that makes it compliant with FERPA that you don't get from other platforms. I talk about co-work, I've explained that, and I have, the research that I did in one of them. Platform tips, there are things that people don't really understand about token usage. So I have some tips to kind of limit those. So, you know, you get so many tokens during a particular session or month or whatever subscription is. And they accumulate, I don't know, it's not exponential, geometrically, I guess, I don't know. It's like a snowball effect, right? So you can, your first chat is going to have, let's say, 100 tokens. When you do your second chat, or your second prompt within that same chat, right? That's not going to be like 200 tokens. It's going to be maybe 500 tokens because it starts over from the beginning, right? And then accumulates. Then your next one might be 1,500 tokens because now it's going back to the beginning. So it's capturing the first, the second, and now your third prompt. So you can spend tokens pretty quickly. One way to stop that is to click the stop button, right? If you see that it's headed in the wrong direction, stop it so you don't use all those tokens and then go back and edit your prompt and correct it. So there's tips like that. There's tips about how to create like a new thread off of the output that it already gave you. There's a bunch of other stuff in there. So those are the tips on using them. There's an appendix about how to build a rubric. There's a 3-platform negligence complaint. Oh, this is one of the exercises I give. So I asked the students to use generative AI to create a complaint. I give them a fact pattern and they have to create a complaint in their ChatGPT or Claude, whichever they use. Then also get a form from Lexis or Westlaw. Then also, I have a practice management platform with document assembly. I asked them to create one there. And then they have to do a comparison across all 3. And I assumed that they were going to prefer the document assembly one, but actually they preferred using all 3 because they thought that ChatGPT did a better job on narration or the narrative part of the facts. There's Lecture Lens that I use all the time and I'm being very vulnerable here. You will see it in the appendix. So what this is I upload my syllabus and I ask it to look at my syllabus from the student's point of view and point out any areas that need clarification, or maybe I need a bridge before I jump onto that topic. Like there's a gap there that they're not quite gonna learn without. So points those out. I also uploaded a transcript of one of my classes and I asked it to give me an evaluation. And this might not be a surprise to you. It told me to shut up a bit and let the students talk, that I was inserting too much of my own stuff and not just letting them figure it out on their own, which was really good feedback. And then it asked me from there, you know, do you want to help me suggest a revision of your syllabus? Do you want me to help, you know, write a script for your lecture to streamline it more and make sure that you're not stepping in as much as you are, all that kind of stuff. So you can read through that. There are 3 custom GPT templates. There's a Socratic teaching assistant, a negotiation custom GPT, and a Canvas bot. So I create one for my classes. I don't like students to, you know, how many times do you guys say, it's in the syllabus, right? Just look at the syllabus. So I created a little bot where I upload my syllabus and I upload my office hour, like all the stuff that's in my syllabus. And then there's a bot there so they can ask it instead of asking me, like, when's the next assignment? When's the final exam? Where's the final exam? All of that stuff. There's a directory of 9 interactive tools and custom GPTs with links and access notes. So there's all kinds of things that I created in here. There's a custom GPT on how to properly prompt using the correct format. And also an artifact that does the same thing. There's one on IRAC. There's a bunch of stuff. And then an explanation of what Claude artifacts are and a no-code guide to building your own. There's also a suggestion in the book. One of the things that we're lacking is data. And I'm hungry for data because I produce all these things and I get anecdotal evidence from my students that, oh my God, like one student came up to me the other day and said, I finally understand con law. And that's not like a swipe at our con law professor. She's fantastic. And even a couple of students who were standing there said, what are you talking about? I won't mention her name, but she's so great. And she said, yeah, she is, but I just wasn't getting it. But now I finally get it. Yesterday, I spent about 20 minutes working with someone in our clinic who has represents the wife in a divorce. The wife is very stubborn and wants to go to trial. They have some cash assets that they could just split and settle. She thinks it's the best idea for them to settle the case. The husband, for religious reasons, doesn't want a divorce, doesn't believe in divorce. And the relationship between the attorney and the students who have spoken to both sides has not been a good one. So we created a custom GPT and put in the facts, not any of the confidential details, but the facts. And so now a student can go in and practice the conversation, given those character types and what their objections are. And it, like I said, it took us 15 to 20 minutes to do it. So it gives them, it steps into the roles of both the respondent and the petitioner, and also as the coach, and gives feedback on the response. There's an explanation on how to do that in there. Like I said about data, I get reports anecdotally. I have some information in there about our February bar exam takers. They were given a survey. There were 23 passers, I think, correctly, that's correct in the book, and maybe 9 who didn't pass. But 21 of the students who said that they used generative AI, all of them passed. The other 2 of the 23 didn't use, they used the commercial program that's offered to them. And we don't know about the 9. They didn't use generative AI. We don't know what they used, honestly. So that's some evidence, right? But there are other variables that could have come into play. Maybe they spent more time, maybe they didn't work, maybe academic success and bar prep were particularly helpful to them. There's all kinds of things. So I have an idea of how we can kind of test the efficacy of these platforms. So that's laid out in the book as well. So if anyone wants to help me with that, I would be really happy about that. So please contact me. And also please send me feedback on the book if there's something that I left out or something I skimmed over or something that's not clear, or whether you think it just sucks, tell me that too. I mean, just give me, I want feedback so I can improve the book and provide more resources. And we will be updating it yearly for at least the next 2 years. And the technology changes so fast that maybe I can add appendices as the technology changes to make it simpler than doing a rewrite of the book. Okay, any questions, feedback? Yes, sir.
Like, how much bullet tools, because we need out of pocket, it's very expensive. Certainly going to support church.
Mm-hmm.
And like also playing around with plot and stuff like that, depends on the model. Where did you get grants to like that?
No, I'm paying. I don't suggest this. I'm paying out of pocket. I was an early sign-on back in November 2022 for ChatGPT, and I just kept joining them. Quite honestly, I have to look at my credit card statement because I have no idea how many platforms I subscribe to now. I've got Perplexity. I've got a ton of them. But within my department, Mike Pearson, who's just a godsend, he's fantastic. He and I run legal education technology. His subscriptions are paid for through our budget because I didn't want him to be out of pocket. I mean, I use it for all sorts of things, right? I use it for personal use. It would be very difficult for me to divide my use because I use it all constantly. Use my phone or I just use it all the time. But there are some in that chapter 3, when I go through the platforms, there are some suggestions of how for the different tools that I've created, like for doing custom GPTs, you have to use ChatGPT and you have to have a subscription to do that. So that's built in. But, you know, I use Claude and ChatGPT together quite a bit. I think Claude writes better instructions, ironically, for custom GPTs than ChatGPT does. But that's all written out in the book. I wouldn't, you know, beyond that, now that Google has completely changed its search engine and all of that, I'm not sure if Perplexity is necessary to pay for any longer. Oh, and one thing, please check out Notebook LM. It is a fantastic product, especially for doing research. That answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Curious. That was pretty long. There's that.
Fortunate in a way because of the department that I run. So I'm an administrator, but I'm also faculty. So I get to use any of the software that I like to, and I have administrative rights to my computer. But we haven't seen any lockdown because I work with faculty all the time to deploy these tools. And like I said, I was working with a clinician yesterday. We haven't seen any lockdown. They would prefer that we used Copilot, but I've made steady arguments rather to them about why it doesn't meet trying to cheap. So it's worked so far. Who knows? We're in Texas. So who knows what the legislature will do? Sure. Somebody else had a question? Oh, Hannah.
Hey, sorry, can I get the mic? Put that on.
Oh, sorry.
We have a mic so that it gets on the recording. Sorry for the, thanks. So the appendices will always be updated or on the website. And we're aware of the fact that this might be better as an ebook because you're going to be doing a lot of cutting and pasting out of it. And it's hard to cut and paste out of a paper book. But if you're trying to get at your faculty who are uncomfortable with ebooks, that's why the P-book is also available. And I think we'll have a version that's got like either a spiral bound or a comb so that it can lay flat. And as Korin mentioned, we didn't just engage her for this one book and she's gone. We said, can you stick around for a couple of more revisions in I think we said 2 years, but you could probably write a new one right now. Because we're perfectly aware that the whole landscape of this is in constant change. One final point: if you don't just have to download the PDF from the website. You can download the Microsoft Word version eventually in the next week or so. And that lets you, if you want to, insert into the book local policies or things that might be true in the book, but they're not true here at our institution before you redistribute it to your faculty or something like that, or to students even.
Yeah, and there's a ton of prompts in there throughout all of the chapters that you can copy and paste and tweak to make your own. The goal really was to help people who, maybe they tried it a couple of years ago or last summer or something, and they didn't see what was so great about this thing, right? So it's to get people over the hump, and then hopefully for people who are already using it, some fresh ideas on how it can be used for different things, not just for custom GPTs for students to learn, but also in your own work. So there's artifact. The artifacts are very cool, pretty nice. So there's links to everything.
So I have a question for the crowd. How many of your institutions are purchasing AI literacy courses for faculty? Let's start with that you know of.
I think school do that over the summer.
Are any of you purchasing? Sorry, are any of you purchasing an AI literacy course this summer to be used in the fall for your students? I'm including, sure, ProCertus would be an example. There's a lot of other examples. Harvey, but theirs is free. Who else? National Society, NLST.
Here's heard of Hotshot?
Hotshot, that's right. Anybody on Hotshot?
they've added a ton more stuff to it. It's really good.
Yeah, that's a constantly moving target as well. Interesting. All right. Actually, no, one last question. How many of you are developing your own AI literacy course for your students or faculty? Sorta? How many of you have a committee?
Know what we're doing, as opposed to like an entirely separate literacy, like literacy, or are we like putting it separate and it's a little special?
When the librarians are teaching it, are they also including how to create their own custom GPTs, how to use Notebook LM, and all of those kinds of things to use it outside of legal research?
For the research work that I do separate things on all that.
Yeah.
And how to teach all that stuff. My favorite thing, how do you have this that yours, what you have access to, but your students have access to are not the same. So how many people have this problem where what you have access to and what your students have access to is not the same? So I have access to ChatGPT EDU because I bought it, and the students have access to the whole Google suite, including Gemini, but the faculty and staff cannot access it. So they have Notebook LM, like a secure version. I just have the thing I bought. So that's one of the many problems we have teaching. One of the big ones is the tools are inconsistent across the different audiences that we need to work with.
Yeah, I students buy a subscription to ChatGPT only because of the custom GPTs. They can only be used in ChatGPT, and recommend one in Claude. However, until I wrote the nutshell anyway, there wasn't a book adopted, right? It was all that, they didn't have to pay for that. So there's a $20 subscription, and none of them get rid of it. I tell them, you can get rid of it after we finish the custom GPT stuff, none of them. They build their own for all their other classes, and for bar prep.
Did they understand that everything that they're doing is being trained unless they check the box? And I'm a little leery of that box. Excellent. The number of lawyers that I've seen that's just like, what do you mean?
They don't get it.
Confidentiality? What confidentiality?
Anyone else? So what do you think? Useful? Not useful? Useful?
Can you make it a wiki? I'm kind of serious.
Yeah, one of the things I have in the last one is like,
Besides you, who would contribute?
No, I just want something that can be like edited because 5 seconds from now, suddenly co-work does magic, and now where are we?
please look into Claude Skills, which is, that's a plug for them.
Idea. So a couple of things on the wiki idea, like Jenny Wondrasik and I had this idea a couple of years ago to create like a modular textbook like this that you could update in a collaborative fashion over time, because things do change so fast, and we can never find a platform to host that. Like we talked to Aspen, we talked to Carolina, and it's like, they're like, yeah, but we want just a traditional ebook. And we're like, we don't.
So I published with Wes, so I went to them first, right? I was telling John. They're like, faculty don't pay for books.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is part of the AI literacy thing as well. Is, John and I were talking last night a little bit at the bar, but it's like, how many people would be interested in an open source AI literacy world where you could just plug and play into your classes as you see fit instead of, okay. So if you're interested in that, come and see me and we can chat. So Korin, yes.
Of other people they created a site where the idea behind it is that people could share their custom GPT instructions and their artifacts and things that they've learned. But that's not super well known. It's only the people who attended some of their webinars that know about it. I was thinking maybe.
So Sean and I have been talking about this at length for a few years too. And so it's,
Yeah. we should bring Sean into, he's got some great.
Yeah, I mean, this is so by the way, my name is Kent and I work for Clio now. I used to be at the University of Oklahoma. You worked with Sean for 3 years. And so my job now is academic partnerships, and part of our strategy is to do this type of work with law schools and not just like be a vendor who sells publications, but actually like create a world where we all work together to develop the literature, the competencies, the frameworks, the modules, and plug and play stuff for classrooms. So if you're interested in that, please come talk to me. Hopefully this summer we'll start working on some of those initiatives. And I was talking to John about distribution because Cali's everywhere and Clio is also everywhere. And so we might be able to do some cool stuff. But yeah,
Provide a great platform, free to all the students, free to all the faculty, it's great.
And we pay the authors.
Mhm.
So will this soon, the print books soon be available for sale, and will the online ebook?
Free download, that's our email model.
Right.
Download the ebooks for free. Obviously, the print books can't be free because.
Right, sure.
They'll be for sale probably, by that. Very low.
But sometime this summer, can we expect those or? Okay, great. I understand. Perfect. Thank you.
And remember, look at the appendices. There's so much stuff in there. That you can just copy and paste and use, and just use the links. Well, thank you, everyone.